Hello everyone and welcome to yet another video. This video is about common pitfalls that new and inexperienced directors fall into. I've put together this video because of numerous requests I've gotten over the years for advice for new directors, typically ones at the high school theater level. Directing is, as you may know or have discovered, a very difficult job. With so many moving parts, it takes a very dedicated and hard-working type of person to do it and do it well. Many will fail and fail hard, again and again and again. Believe me, I have been there. But I have found that if you get back up on that horse, each show gets a little easier and easier to produce. The following are some common mistakes or pitfalls I've seen new and inexperienced directors make that typically result in making their jobs harder than they need to be, or at the very least produce some crazy, lackluster, barely pulled together shows. Now, these are mostly based on my own experiences and from the feedback I've gotten from other directors over the years. As usual, none of this is to be taken as gold, and you are well within your right to disagree with me and tell me I'm a nutcase. Either way, here we go. 9 common pitfalls for new or inexperienced directors. Pitfall number 1. Not invested enough. You are the captain of the ship. You are the leader, and everyone is going to be looking to you to steer the ship in the right direction. So if a director shows a seemingly lack of interest or investment in a project, it shouldn't be a surprise when no one else is invested either. A production is only as good as the effort people put into it, and if no one is feeling like it's worth it, then the show is going to be a dud. So, here's what you can do. Find something to get excited about, even if it's a show you don't particularly like. Look, I can personally say that I've directed my fair shows that I did not like, and I think a lot of directors can say the same. What makes it worthwhile is finding that something to get excited about. Maybe it's your actors. Nothing is more fun than working with a bunch of really fun and talented actors, even if the show isn't particularly well written. Your actors will make it a worthwhile show to produce and watch. Or maybe you can take that show and turn it into something new and different. Let me give you a few examples from my own life. I was once asked to direct a high school one-act for a state competition, and the show the students had selected was not only poorly written, it was weird. It was a strange murder mystery that had some odd supernatural elements that made no sense, and the ending was quite predictable. I was very displeased when I read it and questioned how on earth I was going to make it a worthwhile show, not just for my students, but for the audience and more particularly the judges. So as a solution, we turned it into a spoof, poking fun at murder mysteries and making the characters exaggerated and over the top. With this idea, then, we were able to find all sorts of ways to have fun with the script. And I was able to teach my students a bit about physical comedy and the joys of overacting. Another example I can draw upon was a children's theater production I was hired to direct. It was a version of Snow White, and the script was, for lack of a better term, confusing. It was strange and bizarre, and I had trouble trying to figure out how to make it interesting. So I turned to my design team and decided to push the design of the show into something no one had seen before. We decided to go Victorian and steampunk with the design, and the show turned out gorgeous and visually interesting despite the crazy script. Another piece of advice, or rather a warning, scripts for children's plays are often terrible. You will have to get creative if you choose to do them. Pitfall number 2. Disorganized and poor time management. Once again, you are the captain of the ship. It is up to you to inform the crew of how to get to your destination. As a director, you will need to be organized, and you will have to learn how to manage your time wisely. 2 of the biggest complaints I hear from actors about directors they don't like to work with are, 1, they are disorganized and no one ever knows what is going on, and 2, they waste everyone's time. This is usually in the form of asking actors to be at rehearsals and then making them sit for long periods of time with nothing to do. So, here is what you can do. Have a plan before you start rehearsals. I would go so far as to even have one before auditions. Make sure you have a schedule you can give to actors before rehearsals begin that tells them when to be at rehearsal and what you'll be covering each night. And here's another bit of advice. Take a close look at actor schedules, which you should make sure to include on their audition forms, and plan your rehearsals accordingly. It does you no good to plan for a night of running through Act 1, Scene 1 when half the actors in that scene will be missing that night. Another tip, work on large group stuff first, small group stuff next, and end your evening with solos, duets, and two-person scenes. You can get the large group stuff out of the way, and then the majority of your actors can go home. Don't waste people's time by working with just one actor while everyone just sits there. Push those moments to the end of the night. You will not be able to avoid actors just sitting around doing nothing. You just won't be able to avoid that. But you can try to eliminate it as much as possible. You can also ask an assistant director or someone you trust to take those actors who have nothing to do and work with them on memorizing lines, reviewing blocking, or choreography, and so on. Pitfall number 3. Focusing too much on tech. I've seen this one so much, especially at the high school level. Directors who focus way too much time on the technical aspects of the show that they sacrifice the quality of the performance itself. Their minds are focused on the set design, the costumes, the lights, and so on, when they should be focused first and foremost on the actual performance. So here is what you can do. The analogy I like to use is cake. You can have the best looking cake around with the fanciest of decorations, but if the cake itself tastes like garbage, then the cake is bad. If you focus your attention on the frosting and none on your cake, you will have a terrible cake. Focus on your cake. Focus on your actors. Some of the best shows I've ever seen had no set, virtually no costumes, and absolutely no props. What made these shows fantastic was the quality of the acting, the performance itself. As a director, I always ask the question, if we were to strip away all the bells and whistles, the props, the costumes, the scenery, would our show still be good? If the answer isn't yes, then somewhere we lost our focus. Pitfall number 4. Casting the wrong people. I blame Hollywood for this one. We get it stuck in our heads that the best people for the job are the ones who look like the people we expect, which inevitably is the prettiest, the skinniest, and the most attractive. We can get stuck in this little rut about what a character should look like, and we focus too much on trying to find someone to match that. But guess what? You are not Hollywood. You do not have thousands of actors to choose from for one role. Most of the time, you're lucky if you have 2. I've seen far too many actors cast into roles that were way beyond their skill set or experience, simply because they looked the part. The other common mistake with this is casting people who are super talented but are terrible people. You've heard terms like diva, prima donna, high maintenance. These terms exist for a reason. I have worked with many a talented actor in my days, but some of them I refuse to work with again because they were so terrible to work with. They ruined the experience for everyone. This usually comes in the form of ego, but sometimes it does take on poor work ethic, bad people skills, overt criticism, and so on. So here is what you can do. Cast the people you want to work with, regardless of looks or talent. A little later, I will show you my casting system, how I choose an actor for what role, but the main focus of that system is asking the question, do I want to work with this person? I mentioned this in another video, but I would much rather work with a person I know I can rely on than the most talented actor out there, particularly if that actor is a pain to work with. I will choose personality over talent every single time. Here's another tip. Try thinking outside the box. This will change your perspective on who should be playing what role. For example, Dorothy doesn't need to be a brunette, although wigs can fix any hair issue. She also doesn't need to be short or skinny. What would the show look like if she were tall, chubby, and blonde? Does her appearance affect the overall message of the show? I would argue it doesn't. One of my favorite things to do as a director is challenge people's conceptions of characters. I love casting the person people would least suspect. It gives a different quality to the show, and it offers actors new challenges. Pitfall number 5. Lacking a clear vision. I know you're probably already tired of me saying this, but you are the captain of the ship. If you don't have a destination, then how the heck is your crew supposed to get anywhere? Here is what you can do. Spend some time with the script before rehearsals, before auditions, before you meet with your production team. Read the script more than once and come up with a theme. For example, the one act I directed, our theme was murder mysteries are cliche and silly. For Snow White, it was as simple as Victorian steampunk. Once you have a theme, then every decision from there will be easier. When you are not sure how something should look, sound, feel, etc., fall back on your theme. What will be the best decision you can make that will enhance that theme? And having a theme will give direction to your design crew and your actors, so be sure to share it often and always, and right from the very beginning. Pitfall number 6. Too much involvement. I was going to make a video, and I may still do it, about directors who do not trust their team. I've worked with this director before, and not going to lie, I've also been guilty of being this director. The director who has to have their hands in everything. To fall back on the ship theme, a captain doesn't tell the quartermaster how to do their job, or the gunner, or the boatswain, or the first mate. If they did, first of all, they're going to annoy the crap out of everyone, and secondly, they're going to wear themselves out. Here's what you can do. You cannot do everything. One of the best lessons I've ever learned, not just as a director, but as a leader in general, was to trust people to do their jobs. As a director, you need to trust your crew, your design team, your actors. Let them do their jobs, and don't get so involved in every single decision being made that you wear yourself out or stress out your team. And honestly, no one wants to be micromanaged anyway. Learn to trust. Here's a tip. Learn to let people fail. I know that sounds counterproductive, but let me explain in another way. Take a moment and recall a time you had to learn something new. Did you learn better by having someone direct you or walk you through the process? Or did you learn more by doing it yourself? My guess is it's the second. At some point, everyone needs to learn to fly on their own, and that is unfortunately going to involve some trial and error. I've seen this a lot, especially at the high school level, and it drives me nuts. Directors who are constantly stopping a run-through to correct something that went wrong. Here's my advice. Do not be that director. If you say you're going to run through something, then run through it without stopping. Let the mistakes happen and address them afterwards. Most of the time, you will find that your crew, actors, whoever, have already figured out how to fix it without you. And by letting them figure it out on their own, you've nearly guaranteed that it won't happen again, or at least not in the same way. There are other positives to this method. First of all, you allow your team to take ownership of their jobs. And secondly, you strengthen the team by showing them that you trust them. So I know it's going to be extremely difficult for some of you. Believe me, I struggle with that urge too. But please stop stopping. Pitfall number 7. Not enough involvement. I'm going to say this very slowly and very clearly. I hate lazy directors. I hate lazy directors, and I know that a lot of other actors do too. This circles a bit around to the first pitfall I mentioned, not enough investment. By being lazy or half-assing your directing, you are basically telling your team that you don't care. So here is what you can do. Get in there, be involved, make decisions, give directions, be a freaking director. Here's a tip. Don't sit down. Physical limitations aside, do not sit down as a director until you are doing run-throughs. Even then, I would argue that you shouldn't. I have a hard time sitting down as a director. Even during run-throughs, I'm up and moving around, watching the show from different angles, from different spots in the house. And being up and moving, it gets my brain working better. I'm more apt to catch mistakes or notice something that looks a little hinky. As a director, I'm constantly assessing every little detail, looking for things that can be changed or fixed to make a show better. Before run-throughs, I'm never in the audience. I am typically physically on the stage with the actors as I'm working on blocking and giving notes. If I'm not on the stage, I'm smack in front of it so I can give actors notes as we work together. Here's another tip. Show. Don't tell. If you can demonstrate what you were looking for, I've found in my experience an actor is more likely to give it to you. Also, this is a great way to show your team that you are invested in the success of the show by physically getting in there. As a director, I'm usually sweating half an hour into rehearsal, if not sooner. Pitfall number 8. No flexibility. This is the opposite of number 7. There is a danger of becoming too strict in your vision of the show. Similar to pitfall number 6, you are too involved. Actors are not robots and will not give you everything you ask for. So here is what you can do. Learn to include your actors in the process. Learn the art of collaboration. You may have some pretty specific ideas about what your show should look like, but guess what? So do your actors. Many of the actors you will work with will have several ideas, and if you give them a chance to share them, you may be pleasantly surprised over what you get. I am a director who gets very picky about things. I will sometimes work a single 2-line moment of dialogue over physically again and again until it gets to a place I like, because I like to play. But I always try to include my actors in that process, seeing what they can bring to the table, and I often find they have better ideas than me. So yeah, we'll spend half an hour on 2 lines of dialogue, but in the end, we've all contributed to the experience and we've all come to a destination together. Here's a tip. After you've given your actor some basic blocking, give them some time to just work the scene as they see it unfolding. Then you can add your 2 cents as a director on top. Again, you will give your actors ownership of the production and make them feel like you trust them and appreciate what they have to bring to the show. Pitfall number 9. Too much of what you expect. Now this one's my own personal opinion, but I hate seeing exactly what I expect to see when I go to a show. This is true of movies, books, TV shows, anything entertainment-wise. As an audience member, I want to be surprised. I want to be impressed. If I wanted to see the standard Broadway version of a show, I would have gone to see it on Broadway or caught the touring production. If I wanted to see a 3D rendition of that movie, I would just stay home and watch the movie. It bores me, and as an actor, it doesn't get me excited about a show. I know some directors will disagree with me, and yeah, I've heard plenty of theater goers make the, well, that's not how it's supposed to look comments too. But personally, I think each of those moments forces those audience members to experience something outside of their comfort zone. And how do we grow as people? By moving outside of our comfort zones. So here is what you can do. Think outside the box. As I mentioned before, I like to try to find new ways to do old things, like turning a murder mystery into a spoof comedy or producing a steampunk Snow White. My advice as a director is to let go of your preconceived ideas and dive in feet first. I want to see that Wizard of Oz with a 6-foot-tall, 250-pound blonde Dorothy. Make it happen and challenge my expectations, because that is interesting theater. I'm going to wrap things up by sharing some of the processes and ideals I've developed over the years. Now, you can take them or leave them, and I will be honest and tell you that none of these ideas are my original ideas. I have stolen them from other directors who have stolen them from other directors, and so on. In the end, you need to find what works for you, but here are some of the things I do. Number 1, my casting system. As promised, I will take a moment to share with you how I cast a show. I actually shared this in another video, but I will reiterate it here. I have a numbering system, and each number answers the question, do I want to work with this person? A 3 means yes, absolutely. A 2 means maybe, and a 1 means absolutely not. I then assign a number to each actor as I watch them audition. Sometimes I will give them more than one, depending on how many times I watch them, but I always go with the largest number, and how I assign those numbers depends on what I'm directing. If it's a production for a community theater with a wide audience that charges a lot for their shows, then I will be much, much pickier. 3s are assigned to only the best of the best. 2s are basically then only if I have to. But if I'm directing a small town high school production, then a 2 becomes a yes, I think this person is teachable. I rarely give out 1s with high school shows because the focus is more on giving the students a positive learning experience than putting on a great show. With a big community theater production, the focus is on trying to put on the best show possible. Once auditions are over, I put all my auditionees into 3 different piles, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s. I first grab the 3 pile and cast the show from there. If there are still open roles, then I reach for the 2 pile. Rarely, very rarely, have I ever been forced to take a 1. I cast according to how much I want to work with that person. I don't spend a lot of time during auditions thinking about who would be great in what role. I typically think about that later. Sometimes an actor will stand out and I will think I have to put them in this particular role. But most of the time, I keep an open mind and focus on their talent, their personalities, and how adaptable they will be. Things like confidence goes a long way. I will always put a confident actor as a 3, even if their audition was bad. Unless I think they're too confident and will cause an ego problem. So that's my casting system. I cast the cream of the crop first and work my way down. That's basically it. Number 2, how I give notes. I will share this with you as an actor more than a director, but everyone hates note-giving sessions. I especially hate it when I'm sitting around for half an hour or more and a majority of the notes do not pertain to me. This goes back to what I said before about wasting everyone's time. Some directors will claim that hearing everyone else's notes can be beneficial, and I don't disagree with that remark to some extent, but in the end, it's a huge annoyance. So here is my system that has virtually eliminated the note-giving session and made many actors much happier. And yes, I totally stole this from another director who stole it from another director who most likely stole it from another director. I use Postits. During run-throughs, I have a stack of Postits. If I have a note, I grab a Post-it, write the actor's name or the character's name at the top, then write my note. I form a pile, then during break, I hand them out, letting the actors know that during the break they can talk to me about clarification. If I have any notes that pertain to everyone, then I jot those down in a notebook, and those are the notes I go over with the whole group at the end of rehearsal, saving a boatload of time. I like this method because A, it saves time for everyone, and B, it gives the actors something tangible to hang on to. I've known several of my actors to put their Post-its in their script to keep track of, and then they can go back and reread them whenever they can without having to write them down themselves. This method isn't perfect. It does have its flaws. First of all, if you are writing a note, it's hard to focus on the show, especially if you're trying to make that note legible for the actor who will be reading it. I try to counter this by having several run-throughs, so I'm sure to catch the moments I've missed. Secondly, notes can be misinterpreted. But again, by having multiple run-throughs, I can ensure that an actor understood what I meant. If they mess up again, then I make sure to address it with them in person the second time. Number 3, my rehearsal process. I went through the standard rehearsal process in another video, but let me share with you a little bit about how I typically run rehearsals. After the initial blocking sessions and before run-throughs, I use the fine-tuning sessions to do just that. Fine-tune. I use a method I've lovingly referred to as the stop-and-go method, which is exactly what it sounds like. I stop, fix something, go back, and run it again. Stop, and go. So, a typical fine-tuning rehearsal will look like this. I let the actors run through a scene or a section of show as indicated on the rehearsal schedule. Let them get a once through, then give them some general very broad notes. Then we run through it again, but this time I'm either in front of the stage or on the stage with the actors depending on the size of the stage, ready to stop them whenever I see something I want to clean up, fix, or change. I call this playing. I often start my comments with something along the lines of, try this, or let's see what happens when you do this instead. I'll also make comments like, this isn't working, or this isn't looking right, followed by, let's see if we can try something different. Again, as I mentioned before, I try to give actors a chance to input their thoughts and ideas as well because I like collaboration. Once the moment is fixed, then we back up a few lines and run them again. I will continue to do this until the scene is complete, or we run out of time. It's very often the second. Near the end of rehearsal, I try to save time for the actors to run through the scene again without stopping, so they can get into the flow of it. Do I expect them to remember every little detail we fixed? Absolutely not. However, I like this method because I feel like it's turning the rehearsal process into something more tangible, something you can almost get your hands on, like working with a bit of clay or paint. It also fixes things in the moment when the actors' heads are in the moment, instead of addressing it after the fact. Furthermore, it gets me off my butt and in the scene. I'm much more invested when I'm in there working with actors. This method is not without its flaws. For starters, some actors just don't care for it. They get frustrated with the constant stopping and feel like they can't get into the flow of the show, which is why I tried to give them 2 chances to run through without stopping each night. Secondly, it's a lot of information to throw at actors all at once, which is the biggest reason I don't expect actors to remember everything. Thirdly, you don't always get to work everything. You run out of time, so sometimes you have to prioritize. With each stop-and-go rehearsal, I try to focus on broader strokes first, then work our way down to the minute details. Depending on who you're working with, you may never get to the details. This method, I find, is also great for ensemble work and shows that require a great deal of movement. Again, it turns the rehearsal into something more tangible, an actual creative process that can involve everyone, not just the director. Number 4, start with a game. This works great with high school students, but I have also found positive effects on community theater productions as well. Start each rehearsal with a game. I usually frame it as a warm-up. For community theater shows, it helps to build camaraderie and energize people for rehearsal. Especially at the community theater level, people are coming in with all sorts of leftover baggage from the day. Playing a quick game can loosen them up and give them a chance to let go of all that baggage. For high school theater, I like starting with a game and then choosing a game or exercise that I think will benefit the cast and turn into a learning experience. So I will often choose games based on what I see during rehearsal. If I find that my students are having issues with getting close to each other, because social awkwardness, then I will choose a fun game that involves physical contact. If my students are having trouble staying on task, then I pick games that emphasize focus and quick thinking. Plus, it's just fun, and they often look forward to it. Number 5, encouragement, encouragement, encouragement. I think as directors, we can often get too focused on what isn't working that we forget to celebrate what is. If you notice something good, point it out. This is another reason why I like the stop and go method. It gives me a chance to offer praise in the moment. When something works out and looks good, I get very excited and scream, yes, that's it, that's fantastic. Or, I love that, what a great idea, that's awesome, keep that. Encouragement can also be used when pointing out flaws or mistakes. If you address something as a chance to improve as opposed to something that went wrong, it makes for a better creative environment. By saying things like, that's not really working, let's try something different, it is much more encouraging than just pointing out a flaw. Again, this is another reason I like the stop and go method, because I'm right in there with my actors trying to find solutions as opposed to just telling them what to do or not to do. It becomes an encouraging collaboration, and I found the more I work with specific actors, the more they start to get energized about the process and have fun doing it. They walk away with a love for rehearsals and not just focusing on the glory of the performance. And that's all I've got today. 9 common, new, or inexperienced director pitfalls and a whole lot of personal advice. Again, as always, you can take it or leave it, but I hope that some of you have found something useful from this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.